Welcome back to Blatantly Honest with Michaela Nichols. Today, I caught up with an old friend, fashion model Brandon Cole Bailey. You may know him as It's Really Ken on social media, but today, he hopes to remind people that his online image is just that. Brandon has a new book coming out called It's Really Not Ken, where he opens up about his own sobriety, bullying, and other events that aren't so picture perfect. Welcome, Brandon. We met years ago when we were both pretty much new to modeling through an amazing friend of ours, Mr. RJ. So I guess let's start at the beginning of your modeling career. Like, what made you want to get into the fashion industry?
So basically, what made me want to get into the fashion industry was my love for musical theater and also for wanting to be on film and television. I never really would have thought that like starting out with modeling was going to be the thing that was going to be a way of getting into being on film and TV. But it's something that I just ended up absolutely loving because I use dance, my acting, coaching, and singing to kind of all incorporate into modeling, which is something a lot of people don't know, as you probably know, that it does incorporate a lot of movement and facial expressions and things that are not so easy, actually.
Yeah, especially the facial expressions and whatnot. I feel like people that aren't in the industry are very like monotone with their reactions and everything in like film and especially modeling. You have to find ways to be animated about literally everything and even talking with your hands, like being big. Like I never used to, people are like, oh, are you Italian? I'm like, no, I just do this now.
Yeah, we just use our hands a lot.
Yeah, we
We're just
use
extra.
everything. Yeah, you got to use the whole space, right? Fill up the space.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, so your main goal was to get into film and that kind of stuff, and then you just kind of struck gold with modeling.
Yeah, so basically, like getting scouted by another mutual friend of ours, Kira Alexander, is kind of how that went. I mean, we were both with the first mother agent. She was quite a show, wasn't she?
Yeah,
To say the
that's
less.
that's a great way to describe her as a show.
Yeah, quite a show. Also, quite a bully. So,
Very much so a bully. And I mean, yeah, again, we won't name her just so no one comes after us, but it's just crazy to see how people in the industry tell you how to be. And it just like blows my mind because I'm like, all right, if you're going to tell me to lose weight, you lose weight. Or if you're going to tell me to change my hair, you like you do something about your hair. Like, I'm sorry. Like, don't come for me like that. Like, I know there's a standard, but I mean, with you, I know you're a little bit on the shorter side. So what did they do? Like tell you to, I don't know, grow?
yeah, I guess if remember it, we look back on it and it was like everybody was always telling me, that I was too short. And then I finally had this amazing mother agent that believed in me and that was like, we're gonna do this. Now, are we going to lie about that? Yeah, we're going to lie for quite some time, but it worked, it got my foot in the door. And the thing about it was I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I never really did, right? Like, I didn't like being told no from my parents. I didn't like being told no from my friends. I didn't like being told no, period. It's like my least favorite word on earth is no. So for me, I've always been like, well, if you're going to say no, then I'm going to just prove you wrong. And I think that that's something that helps a lot of us. I think through bullying and stuff, like being told certain things, it kind of motivates us in a way to do better, to do more, because there's not many people that I know that got by in school that weren't bullied as much. I mean, I feel like everybody's bullied in a little bit of a way, so I can't say that they weren't at all, but weren't bullied to an extreme, that have come to a place of success.
Yeah.
That is not, I mean, everybody can be successful in their own ways, right? Like, so even if you're working at a grocery store or whatever, you move your way up to the top, you're successful, you're creating a life and you're working. But the thing about it is like, I think that what happens when you're extremely bullied is that you're taken to the next level of wanting to be something even greater and even more and building a platform in order to help other people feel like they're not alone, to help people not have to go through what we went through, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, taking pills to be skinny, throwing up to be skinny, taking, testosterone at the age of 15. It's just like, there's all kinds of things that are just those types of things are things that kids should not have to go through nowadays. And I feel like both you and I have built this platform to be able to help others. Mine's a little different than yours, which I'm so grateful to be able to come on here today and talk with you and be a part of this, because I think it's really, really important that we try to end this as much as possible. I know that we're just like a micro speck in the universe, but anything to change one singular life is very important.
Definitely. And I think everything that you said is so true. Like, young people shouldn't have to go through what we went through. I mean, we went through hell and back. Like, if we're going to be completely like straight up with one another, like, I'm surprised we're still in one piece, to be honest. Like, mentally,
We sure did.
like the
Depression.
whole, yeah, just like the stages in life. But again, it kind of takes that perspective and saying, like, I made it through, and I'm going to show you how you can make it through too. So why don't you let people know a little bit about your own struggles with bullying?
So I guess like some things that come with it are like, I guess when you try to create this platform to be larger and bigger than life in order to be able to help others, I don't think that people understand the things that come along with that. I think that we watch documentaries and we see things growing up about like what celebrities go through, and then they overdose and they die or they kill themselves. There's a lot of things that go on that we watch on TV, but we don't quite understand. We're like, as a child, you're kind of like, well, why would they do that? You know what I mean? Like, how, you know, wow. Or
Yeah.
just, but I think like now that society is developing a little bit more into a social media realm, right? I think people are noticing that like once you start to get any type of following, and once you start to get any type of, fame or self-proclaimed fame or whatever, it gets 10 times harder. The bullies get 10 times worse. But I think that having it younger gives you this platform and this background to be able to say, okay, well, I can still do this. I can push through because I did it when I was younger, and I can do it now. And if I'm doing it now for a purpose, and you have a purpose in life, like I've come to a realization recently, and you want to talk a little bit about where it's taken me. And it took me to rehab, you know what I mean? And it took me many years of struggling with addiction, alcoholism, depression, all these mental things, severe anxiety, panic attack disorder, tremors, all these things that developed through things that happened to me, because it wasn't just bullying, right? Because you have one side, you're being bullied, then the other side, you're living this whole other world like Hannah Montana through being a social media famous person or a model where people are sexually abusing you. I was raped when I was 14 years old. That's something I never spoke about. Then I was again in my sophomore year by a senior. And I think that all these things kind of compile, and there's only so much you can take. I'd like to pride myself in being a really strong person, and being able to kind of like ignore it. But what happens is you get put on a medication, right? Instead of the doctor saying, okay, maybe you should see a psychiatrist or a therapist, maybe talk about it. It's like, here's a medication, and what that does
Always.
just covers it up. So for 9 years of my life, it was like covered up. And it was like, okay, but
It's getting
things
worse.
just progressively get worse and worse and worse. And then you just don't care about yourself anymore. And so then there comes a point where either it's going to be death, prison, or go get help. You know what I mean? And I think that it's better to choose get help, right?
Get help is the answer.
Yeah, exactly. So, and those are all things that I believe truly stem from bullying, because I think the bullying truly started when I was younger. It was actually someone in my family that really bullied me. And I won't say who or, what relation, but because this isn't about taking people down. This is about just sharing a story, right? And that's something that I did in my new book that's coming out, is that I spoke my truth, but I didn't attack, because it's not about attacking. It's to show and help others know that they're not alone. And I think through my story, it's very much been, and even yours, you're extremely gorgeous, right? So
Thanks.
yeah, well, you are, and we all know it. and so does everybody watching this, you know what I mean? And everybody watching me also is like, well, this is the plastic perfect little Ken doll or whatever. So how can we listen to him because we're not him? But the thing is like, I was not always this. You were not always that. You know what I mean? We built this, and even underneath all this makeup and all this, you know, persona and all this, you know, showing that we're happy all the time, it's is a person that's very hurt, is a person that's real, a human being, because we are not robots, right? Like, we're all human beings. We all go through the challenges through school and life and finances and all these things we struggle with. And it doesn't matter. You can be the richest person on earth. You could be the poorest person on earth. If you don't have a purpose, and that's what I love what you're doing, because also I found my purpose recently through recovery, is that you can't be happy, period. You have to have a purpose, right? And now I'm going to let you talk because I feel like I'm taking over the show.
No, I absolutely love it. And I'm so happy that you're talking, and you've touched on a lot of great points. I mean, people, I'm sure, look at you, and I'm sure you've heard this term, so like, don't yell at me, but like pretty boy, I'm sure people have called you that your whole life, always pretty, like always this. And I'm sure that's impacted you because it's like, well, that's just kind of how I am, you know, like we have these giant eyebrows and like light eyes, and like that's always just been us. But
Right.
people see that and they attack you for it. Do you think that people, especially you've come out as gay, so do you think people attacked you more because you were entering the industry as like a gay model, or it was like, oh, because he's pretty and he must be gay and he must be doing this? Like, where do you think people's judgment really came into play?
I think that there was so much judgment because for me, I wasn't the average 6'2", 32-inch waist model, right? And the thing was, is I had to use so much more skills and so much more communication and be who I truly was in order for people to like me. I had to walk into that door, give that comp card, and be confident, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is yes, people always called me a pretty boy. Besides my weird phase through middle school, where it was like, you know, we all have that little
That
weird
weird
face,
stage.
the
Yeah.
gap in the teeth and the chubby cheeks and the Bieber hair or whatever. But I think that, yeah, pretty boy was always a thing. And it was very annoying because it was like and for people watching that don't really know what pretty boy means in today's society, because today it's positive, because
Mm-hmm.
your and I's generation has made it into something that's positive because we fought and fought for it. But pretty boy back then basically meant that you're gay. You're extremely gay and you're a homosexual. And back then it was still, even today with everything that we've done to fight for gay rights and to fight for, it's still in places like where we're from, like Florida and everything, it's still a hard thing to be in those places. It's still a hard thing to understand that it's okay. You know what I mean? Even for me, I've fought for it ever since I've been on social media. You know, modeling, I was told to not be out as gay on social media, and I denied it, and decided I was going to be who I'm going to be. I was even dropped from an agency because of it, right?
You were
So,
dropped from an agency because you were gay? Are,
yes,
not were.
they would never admit it, but there was a conversation about it beforehand. And then a week later, they had some other excuse that had nothing to do with it. And the thing is like, now we're in a society where it's only gays and transgender and, you know, all kinds of different people that are being booked because we've fought for this. And I'd like to pride myself in being one of those first people that was like, I'm going to be this on social media. I don't care what people are telling me to do. You know what I mean? And could I have been much more successful? Could I have done major campaigns, been making millions of dollars a year? Yes, I could. But does that make a difference in society? No. And the whole purpose I've always had in this industry as an influencer, as a model, has been to help others. So for me, if I wanted to be rich and wealthy and famous, and that's what it was all about to me, then I could have followed this very fake path. That was not me. And I chose not to because I knew that I was going to actually help others. Because I think When I was 18, I got my first message on Instagram from somebody saying, "Thank you so much. I did not commit suicide because of you." And even now, I'm getting chills talking about it. And that's what changed my whole perspective of what I was doing.
Wow. I know those messages really wake you up. And I think, I mean, for me personally, I never thought that I'd be doing, like, I didn't think I'd read a book. I didn't think I'd be talking about, my sexual assault and the bullying and the eating disorders and like, but going through it and then being so transparent about it, yeah, it sucks. And yeah, like, I still go to therapy sometimes. Yeah, obviously, because you're reliving that trauma over and over and over again. But the reason why we do it is so no, so we can save a life, so we can be there for someone. And I think that's so powerful because you and I know when we were little itty bitties, we just were like, oh my God, this is cool. Like we get to,
We're going to be
have,
superstars.
yeah. Yeah. And there's like nothing wrong with that, but like, then it's like, holy crap, like I found my purpose without realizing like this was the route it's going to take. And I mean, you found your purpose now with your book. Did you ever think you'd write a book? Cause I know I didn't.
Honestly, I mean, I did my coffee table book years ago, right? When I was like 19, which was just photos. So it's like that was cool and people liked it and it was, it was what it was. But did I ever think that I was going to write an autobiography at the age of 45? Well, I guess I started writing when I was 23, but I guess no, I feel like it's very crazy, right? Because the universe, if you're a good person, and you have good intentions and you want well for others, the universe will take you on a path that might not take you where you want to go the way that you think it's going to take you where you want to go, but it will take you where you want to go. And if you don't mind, if I could just touch back again, where you said we're reliving the trauma. I think that doing this book was probably one of the most hardest, the most hard things I've done. The reason that I decided I was in a place to finally write this book in order to help others was because I went through intensive therapy, because I saw a psych, because, I went through all these things for self-help that are very important. And I truly believe, I'm not a doctor, but I truly believe that everybody could benefit from having a therapist, a psychiatrist, and a main doctor. And yeah, there's not a lot of, sometimes people don't have insurance and stuff like that, but there are a lot of resources out there in order for people to get that help. And we do relive that every day as influencers for this type of thing, for bullying, for mental health. We have to relive it every single day. But is it worth it saving others' lives? Is it worth it helping others? 110% it is.
Yeah, I tell myself that every day, especially like in the middle of a panic attack, because, going back to something you said, like I have panic attacks and I finally just opened up about that because that was so embarrassing for me. I mean, I didn't know what they were until recently. Like I didn't know, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just dying. Like I can't breathe. I'm sweating, my anxiety. And I'm like, well, why is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm reliving everything in my mind. I mean, what were your panic attacks like? What do you think caused them? Have they gotten away?
I mean, the thing is like no matter how much you work through something, like it's still gonna come back. Things that happened to me when I was a child still come back to me, right? And I think that's especially something when you're super busy and busy and busy, you're good. But the second you go to use the bathroom, the second you go to the shower and you have that minute, you start to have this feeling, right? And sometimes it's actually physical pain. If it was a physical thing that you went through, sometimes you feel the actual physical pain and you actually believe that it's happening to you again. And the thing is this is very real. This happens to a lot of people, and a lot of people cover it up with external things like fancy cars or fancy houses or drinking or drugs, which is the major thing is like self-medication, right? So that's why it's important to have a therapist and a psych to be on some kind of regimen that is, not hurting yourself, because you're not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, or you may even be a doctor, but even doctors still need somebody else to prescribe them or to help them mentally, because what it is called self-medication. And so people take drinking or they take drugs and they use them to keep covering up what's going on, right? And I know this because I experienced it. I can't speak for everyone. All I can do is speak from my experience. And I use them to hide these things, to hide reliving race. I mean, those are horrible things. Abuse is horrible. Even just. But the thing is trauma is not just those things, right? Trauma can literally be tripping in a classroom full of people. Trauma can be somebody, bullying you in front of the whole school. Trauma can be any of these things. It doesn't need to be some major grand thing. Trauma is not always a major grand thing. And in turn, a lot of people don't deal with this, right? And a lot of people don't accept here's another topic. A lot of people don't accept that they have a problem. A lot of people don't accept that it's okay to ask for help. And that's the major thing that I've learned in my recovery, is that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to tell someone, hey, I'm having a panic attack right now. I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? And if you explain your panic attacks beforehand, especially in a relationship, because I think a lot of people worry about relationships with it, is that if you explain it to the person, then they should be understanding. And when it happens to you, then they know how to handle it, or to be quiet, or to comfort you, or to rub, you know what I mean? Whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, if you're with somebody that doesn't understand it, then they're not right for you. You know what I mean?
Amen to that.
So it's just, there's so many things that it's hard, but I'm glad that people are starting to talk about. I'm glad people are starting to open up more. I'm glad people like you are coming out and helping people understand that they're not alone with bullying and, mental health. And I'm really excited for this new chapter. And I think through this pandemic that we've been living through, a lot more people have been having to go through it. Sadly, I've had 7 people die that I know during this time due to either overdose or suicide. And it's never that bad to end it, right? It's never that bad. And in turn, you're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting everyone you love. And even if you think that you have no one that loves you, there is always somebody that loves you. And there's always somebody to call. There's always somebody. Like, you're never fully alone. You know what I mean?
I know. I think suicide is never the answer. And it's heartbreaking and devastating that people think like that's their way out. And it's not. Life gets better. It's always just, obviously, we can't see in the future, but life does get better. And I know that personally because when I was going through what I went through, I thought about suicide. And then I was like, all right, well, who is that going to affect? And it's a decision made so abrupt. And it's like, well, if only you could have worked through that. Not that they should be blamed for taking their own life because they felt like they had no way out, but it's also just, it's devastating because it's like, well, someone loves you and someone would have helped you. Just, it's hard for them to see that light. And that's why these conversations are so important, because people matter and their life matters. And I think we forget that, especially now during COVID, when we feel so alone. I mean, literally, we're in our houses alone, not having that human interaction. So it's sad to see that this is, it's like a plague that's affecting each and every one of us in some other way.
Yeah, even if it's not COVID. And to relate to what you're saying, I too, and in the 2 years before I went into rehab, I didn't care if I lived. You know what I mean? Like, I never told you, I never told RJ, I never told Cassie, I never told any of our best friends because it was between me, right? But that's the problem.
That is a problem.
Had I told somebody, right? Had I told somebody that I was having idealizations all the time, had I told somebody that I would black out because I don't care, because I wouldn't care if I lived, had I told someone, maybe it would have been shorter period of time that I had to go through that. Definitely. But the thing is, that shows, you show and I showed that you can come out the other side. Like, you can, and there's so many times between your career, I'm sure, and my career that, and I've watched because we've known each other for so many years and started from the beginning of our careers, that like, there's always these really, really hard times. always.
Always.
And then it always comes out positive in the end if we keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if we gave up all those times that we wanted to give up, it would just be over. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
but it always does end up coming out positive in the end. So
It does. So speaking of that, and you've been so open on your recovery journey. Like I was so proud of you when you're like, yeah, I'm sober. I've been sober for X amount of days. What was the turning point when you're like, holy crap, like this is a problem, not just like, oh, I'm going to have fun and whatever. Because everyone goes through that stage, but you're like, okay, this is actually a problem.
my turning point is that I kept hurting myself and others, not physically, but mentally, which in turn does go physical for some people, you know. Um, because I was not happy. I mean, people could see it. People could see, you know, through my pictures, through the way I looked physically, you know. It just got to a point. I think the turning point is that I wanted help for so long. And I think that you keep giving excuses that you can't get it because you have to work or you have to do this. There are ways to do it. You just have to do it. Because if you don't help yourself, you're never going to be able to help other people. And you're never going to be able to work if you really hurt yourself by not getting better, right? So at the end of the day, it's like, it's a great investment in yourself. And not monetarily, but emotionally, it's a great investment in yourself. And I don't think that it always has to do with drugs or alcohol. I think that getting help for mental disabilities and stuff like that is really great for everyone. I think everyone could use a little therapy, especially in the day that we live in with social media and all of that. And I really think that a turning point for me was that it was just time. I had an opportunity and I took it. You know what I mean? And I think there are a lot of opportunities for help that present themselves. But when you find yourself going out 7 days a week, even when you're not working the clubs anymore, because, you know, I was a big party host and promoter in New York. Once you find yourself all the time, and then there's always an excuse, right? It's always a birthday. It's always engagement. It's always a bridal shower. It's always it's always something to make an excuse, right? There's always an excuse. And, you know, you get hungover or you do something stupid the night before or you blacked out, but it's okay because like I'm not in jail yet. Or it's okay because I didn't kill myself or somebody else yet. But eventually that does happen. I've seen from other people's stories. And the thing about it is that that's not you. When you're in another state of mind that is altered by any kind of mind altering substance or drug, that is not you. It's not you. You know what I mean? And that's the point, right? We're trying to escape ourselves. But if we learn how to work with ourselves through getting help, through working on ourselves, meditating, and people think meditation is like this yogi, like hum da bum da da, whatever. But it's not really. Meditation can literally be sitting for 1 minute and focusing on your breath. Because we don't take enough time out of our day. We don't put our phone down long enough. We don't get off the computer long enough to just breathe. And yes, we're scared of that though. We're scared of being alone. We're scared of having that moment in the shower with no music and just having to be alone with our thoughts. But sometimes it's best to process those thoughts. Like we need to process those thoughts. And so for me going into this facility, it's not like the movies. It's not like TV. It's basically a little prison. But it's not like, but you know what I mean? You're like stuck there. You cannot leave, and then you're detoxing from all these drugs and you're there with a whole bunch of other people that are also detoxing from a whole bunch of drugs and alcohol, and the thing about it is it's really rough, but it's worth it. And you don't get your phone. And I think the most freeing thing for me was not having a phone, not having to
imagine
social media or look at emails or look at text messages. That was the most freeing thing to me.
That like makes me nervous just thinking about not having like my phone. I'm like, oh my God, like when I get anxious, and the first thing I do is like play Candy Crush on my phone. And it's like, wow, Michaela, like you might not want to do that. And especially like that's kind of our safety blanket, and taking that away while you're going through this whole detox, which I've heard and I've read is not fun. And it kind of makes you feel like you're going crazy.
Oh
So
no, you're definitely in a mental institution. And you are, because the thing is you're not just detoxing from drugs and alcohol, you're detoxing from digital communication. And that's one of the biggest problems in today's society. How many, you can see the reason social media is added how many hours you're on the day is because it's trying to tell you something. Somebody out there is trying to be on our side and say, hey, you guys are using it way too much. You know what I mean? Somebody out there is trying to help out a little bit. But then you have the other media moguls and other media, social media platforms that are all about the money. And
mhm.
that's what this world revolves around, is money. And yes, we need money to live. But if money is making you unhappy, if money does not bring you, is not giving you health, which it doesn't ever, money does not bring you health.
Can't save you
Um,
either.
huh? And
Money
it can't
can't
say,
save you.
no, it can't. When you're in that hospital bed, and that money's paying for your drug, your antibiotics or whatever it may be, then yes, okay, maybe
It
you
might
can
not
see it
work.
that way. But are you working? Are you sitting in that $10 million mansion? Are you driving that $100,000 car? Are you wearing that Louis bag on your arm? No, you're in a hospital bed dying. And so at the end of the day, it's about our mental health, right? It's about
Definitely.
being good to ourselves, and it's about helping others. And that's something that I learned in recovery, is that the biggest thing to help yourself is helping others. And I think we're very blessed to be able to do that through our platforms. But it's helping others, and it is loving yourself and taking care of you first before anyone else, including your family. You come first, period. And that's what I've learned and has been extremely helpful to me. And I will be 10 months sober on the 14th of next month with not one single relapse. And I think that's because I have a purpose and because I like to help others. And that's what's very important.
Wow. I'm so proud of you. 10 months. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
wow. Good for you. Good for you. So you're sober, you're still modeling, living the dream, and you have your book coming out. Where can people buy your book?
So it's at nextstarpublishing.com. And that's where people can pre-order the book right now. Soon it will be up on Amazon and Apple and Kindle, all of that. So that'll be good. But I really do hope people can read it, because I really do have a story to tell. I think a lot of people have this perception of, well, you're too young to write an autobiography, but I mean, you knowing me, definitely, and I knowing you, I think being in this industry, starting at such a young age, I think you started when you were 14 and I started at 15, right? 14? Yeah, I
Yep.
remember. Um,
You have a
it's
story to
a
tell.
different world. You grow up a lot quicker and you see things that nobody else in the world sees. And it's a whole different realm of people and money and celebrity and just things that you see that other people just never see. And so you experience a lot of things a lot younger. But I think that going through those things at an age before you're fully developed is not necessarily a healthy thing.
I agree. Yeah, I think we've seen more than people will see in some
In a
lifetimes. Yeah.
life. You
Yeah.
know.
But we made it through, and you're fantastic, and people need to hear your story, because me knowing you and knowing what you've overcome and everything, I'm personally really excited to see what you share, because I know a lot of it, and like you know a lot of me, and it's just like what is the persona, what is the perception that we want people to understand about us, and that's for us to choose and no one else.
And I think that's what we were lucky enough to do. I think that a lot of people do get caught up in the fame and the money, right? And you and I were lucky enough to tell our true story in a way that was completely authentic. Whereas a lot of people will try to do a documentary, not saying names or whatever, or do something that is not truthful. I mean, anybody can watch it and say that this is a PR stunt, you know what I mean? Or anybody in our industry anyway can watch it and be like, that's not authentic. The only way that you're ever going to help somebody is by being 100% authentic. And that's why I don't think I or you have any problem telling people, this is what I did. This was my life. And this is, this is who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And all we can do is grow as people, right? All we can do is say that was my past and this is me now. But did I do this? Yes, I did this. And the only way that is gonna work to help people is by being completely authentic and honest about things.
Yeah, even when it's hard, and God knows it's hard. It's not pretty being honest all the time, but it is.
And the people that come after you too, after you've been honest, that's the hard part as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Brandon, you are just amazing, and I love you, and thank you for being on.
Be bold, be you, and be blatantly honest.